I'm Andy Semotiuk. I'm a U.S. and Canadian immigration lawyer and an author.
You're watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration, where we share interviews with incredible leaders who are crushing it in life and business.
Hey, welcome back to Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. Today we've got Andy Semotiuk on the show. We had a really great conversation before the show, and I'd love to share some of the stuff that we talked about. But I'm really looking forward to sharing this interview with you guys. So, Andy, you've had a lot of experience in a whole lot of different genres, different niches. You've published 4 different books in different genres. You're an immigration business lawyer, or a business immigration lawyer, as well as a Forbes columnist, a UN correspondent, TV producer. You just had an incredible life, and I'm really looking forward to all that I can learn from you today and everything you're going to share with our audience.
I'm very happy to be with you on this program, and I really enjoyed our preliminary interview, so I'm looking forward to this discussion we're going to have now.
Now, one of the things that I'm excited about with owning Newswire magazine and having this is kind of my business, but how did you decide, or how did you become a Forbes columnist?
Interesting story. Back in the day, in the 1970s, actually, I was a former I was a UN correspondent stationed in New York for 3 years. And I wrote for a newspaper chain in Canada called Southern News Services that had newspapers like in several cities, Toronto, Winnipeg, etc., across the country, and also for some newspapers in the United States. So, and I wrote articles on sort of human rights themes related to the United Nations and immigration. And later, and there's a little story behind that. Maybe I should tell that story first. Let's put it this way. I started writing in university where I went, UBC in Vancouver, Canada. That's where I started. And I had a course called English 101. And in that course, the professor asked us to write an essay about a sonnet. The sonnet was called Death, written by John Donne. And it went, "Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty, for thou art not so," etc. So I wrote an essay on it. And when I got my essay back, it was with a big F on it, and it was read all over the place. So I thought, gee, there's something wrong here. I thought I was not a bad writer. So I went to the professor. I said, I don't know what's wrong. But he says, well, rewrite it. It's not good. There's nothing there. You're not in this, So I rewrote it, submitted it again, same problem, all red F. And I ended up writing this essay 5 times in the course of the year, the final time 2 days before graduation. And I got a 50% pass mark only because I think the professor took pity on me and figured I got to pass this guy or he won't be able to continue with his education. Now, if he heard today, and I forget his name because it was many years ago, but if he heard today that I'm a Forbes columnist or, a contributor, and that I've written 4 books and so on, he would, turn over in his grave. So what happened? I mentioned that I ended up at the UN as a correspondent. But to get there, what I had to do is I had to write essays or articles, and I wrote them in student newspapers. And in the course of my studies in law, I wrote articles and kind of improved my skills. And I sort of followed the adage, if you want to be good at something, do it. So if you want to be a singer, sing. If you want to be a dancer, dance. If you want to be a writer, write. So I wrote. But there was an added catch, and the added catch was, while you're writing, you have to learn how to write better. You have to study those who have written and learn from them how to write better. And so I did that, and over time, as I mentioned, I ended up as a journalist at the UN for 3 years where I was writing articles on the human rights and other stories that were going on there. After that experience, a few decades later, I was in New York practicing law and writing about immigration themes. And one day I got an email from Forbes saying, hey, you're commenting on immigration stories and so on. Would you be interested in writing for Forbes? And I thought, would I? Of course I would. And that was 10 years ago. So for the last 10 years, I've been contributing to Forbes, writing articles primarily on investor immigration and business immigration themes.
Oh, that's incredible. And that was one of the things that I looked at, because you see sometimes people from, for example, Forbes Council, where anybody can get in there, any business owner, you pay
Right.
their fee,
Yeah.
and you're now a not really a columnist, but you've paid to be in there. And I saw some things recently where those articles are not being accepted as actual credible media sources. If you're on the Forbes Council, you're never allowed to apply, to be in some of these other major publications,
Yeah.
because they know it's a
Yeah.
pay to
You're
play kind of thing, and
right.
almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they didn't have that FTC the what was it called, the disclaimer saying, "Hey, listen, I paid
Yeah.
to be able to share my opinion on this."
Some of the,
Now,
forgive me, some of the people that are in my industry, in the U.S. immigration industry, have, written articles or, joined that group and sort of tried to promote themselves in that way. I mean, it's, they're trying to get attention to themselves. So I get why they're doing it, but it's not a road to journalism, really, is what I would say.
yep. And paid media can be a massive, massive boost to traffic and stuff. But we get people sometimes trying to be featured on the cover of Newswire magazine or in a featured article that they want to know if they can pay extra to have the disclaimer removed, whatever. And it's when there's paid media, there's earned media, and both work hand in hand, work very well together. But you need to do both of them ethically and with integrity and honesty. And so that's something right now. If you're watching this show on Amazon Fire TV, this is something. Andy is actually a Forbes columnist. It's not you earned your way and went through. I love that you share that on starting out as a terrible writer and putting in the work, putting in the steps, and actually becoming a phenomenal writer.
It bugs me. I know that there are like industry trade meetings where they say to you, listen, if you want to be on the panel discussion, discussing this theme, it'll cost you $5,000. So they pay $5,000, and there's a panel of, say, 5 guys there, and there might be, 3,000 people in the audience. But they don't disclose at the beginning saying, well, these people paid to be on this panel. They just say, well, here's expert A, B, C, D. And this one's talking on this, and this guy on this and this. If you're in the audience, you think, oh, well, this guy's like really something. Like, wow, he's on the panel. But they don't see the the back end of it. And I'm not really very enthusiastic about that kind of, presentation.
Yep. Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page there. Talking about personal branding and media exposure, you've had tremendous success as a Forbes columnist. And again, Forbes is similar to, not a competitor, but we're in the same niche, same industry. But you've shared a lot you share immigration and policy and a lot of different articles on that. I saw that you had over 1 million readers on one of your recent articles, right?
Yeah, a while ago. I've had several in the 500,000 and so on level, but I wrote one article. It's been a while, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, that got a million readers. But Forbes changed its format. At the time I was writing my articles and where I got 1 million readers, it had the format of paid advertising on the website. So the more readers I attracted, the better it was for the people who were advertising on the website. But Forbes went into a different style, and the style is paywall. So my best so far recently was I wrote an article that pulled in 60,000 readers, but that's nowhere near 1 million readers. And I guess
that's
it's
still huge with a paywall. And that's I hate that business model. That was, I did I had a recent, I guess maybe a year or so ago, was featured in USA Today, and that was a $15,000 ad spot. The PR expert reached out and had the deal saying she didn't know what it cost to be. We were actually at an event in Hollywood Hills, PR deal out there, and she'd approached me. Somebody had said that I was the owner of Newswire magazine, and so she offered a trade where if I'd put her on the cover, she would also do the featured article, $15,000 spot, just traded straight across, which is cool because it didn't have the disclaimer and stuff, because I had not actually paid her anything. But when I got done with that, I'm thinking, heck, I got a $15,000 placement for something that cost me a fraction of that. When I saw the article after it was published, I would not have paid $5 for it, because it was a great quality article, really well written.
Yeah.
But you could not find the article unless you put in quotation marks the exact title of the article with my name, quotes, to Google search it. And when it showed up, you had to send that exact link. I sent it to my grandma, my friends, my neighbors, my clients, everybody. And my grandma called from New Mexico and said, Curtis, sweetie, I really would love to read your article, but I can't see signing up for a yearly subscription. I don't have that kind of money, but I'll do it if you really need me to. And I said, what do you mean? But she said, well, let's her read the first few sentences. And then it was just all hidden with ads and pop-ups. And so it was actually not a great trade for me to be in an article that was hidden behind paywalls and stuff.
Yeah, I don't like the paywall model myself, but I guess I don't own the newspaper or the media outlets, so I have to work with what they've got, and that's the way
yes, sir.
Yeah,
definitely. It's one of the things we can all judge the way a business is run when we're not the one that's responsible for the financials.
I'll just share that in my case, the benefit that I have from Forbes is the mere fact that I write articles that readers read in my area, which is U.S. and Canadian immigration law. So if I get any benefit, it's because someone read my article and then phones or remembers my name, and when they have a need, they contact me. If it weren't for that benefit, it would not be a profitable way for me to go in terms of writing.
And the search engine optimization you're getting from that, just having your name mentioned as a reference over and over and over for years. You've got, I don't know how many thousands of articles when I Google your name or when I search immigration law, and you show up as the expert in every field. Yeah. And so that has a lot that says a lot for the amount of work that you've done. Talking about perfect practice makes perfect. And I love that you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. I took this approach when I'm writing these articles, and that is I decided I'm going to be the communicator of immigration law to the guy on the street, the man on the street, sort of. I'm not going to talk legalese. I'm not going to quote sections and verses of cases or statutes to anybody. I'm just going to talk to them like, normal people talk. And I find that a useful approach in terms of my articles, and also in terms of even talking to other attorneys. They seem to like that approach.
Yeah, it's you'll see a lot of times. What's the saying about a genius can make something difficult sound? What is that? A genius can make something difficult sound understandable, and somebody who wants to sound smart can make something simple to understand sound very difficult.
It's funny you should say that. I have friends who go out of their way to include all kinds of complicated words in their articles, thinking that raises them as someone, who's more dignified in presenting their ideas. When I try to do the opposite, I try to make things as simple as possible for people to understand and talk to them in the same language I do across the kitchen table or in a restaurant or whatever. And I think that's more useful to people.
Now, I saw, not to get off track here, but I saw you help people that are looking to immigrate to U.S. or Canada, and focusing mainly on business integration, people who are already entrepreneurs bringing business into the countries, right?
Yeah.
Now, what was your reason for getting into immigration law? What made you focus on that field?
Okay, that's a bit of a story, but essentially it's this. I'm a first-generation Canadian, born in Canada. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, which is a northern city, very cold up there. I like to say it's so cold there that you have to have a car heater and an electric plug during the winter, otherwise your car won't start in the morning. And I've had the experience of going out to the car, turning the engine, nothing, cold, dead cold, frozen. And then you have to use your credit card to clear off the ice on the windshield, etc. So that's where I was born. But I'm a first generation in Canada. And I come from a family where half my family came to Canada, the other half to the United States. So I actually led my life half in Canada, half in the United States, traveling back and forth from my mother and father in Canada to my Aunt Helen and her husband, Emil, in Los Angeles. And later I practiced law in Los Angeles 10 years. I worked for 5 years in New York, but I've also been working in Canada, and currently I'm in Toronto. But the immigrant experience was a big thing, a big deal for me. And the journeys that they had, along with the hardships, played out in my day-to-day life. My mother, in particular, one of the key things that influenced me was she was hard of hearing. She was deaf. And for that reason, communication became a very important subject in my life. But also, since she was an immigrant and my father was also an immigrant, immigration became an important fact in my life. So those two themes are the two themes that run through my life: communication, excellent communication, and immigration, both U.S. and Canada, because my family went through immigration to the U.S. and to Canada. And that's how I ended up being an immigration lawyer.
I love having guests on that are pursuing their passion and not just, I got into law because it was good, it was a good paycheck. I love hearing those kind of stories. And that was one of the things when I was researching you before we ever started talking on the show here, just saying that you've got a passion for this and it's something you're doing. Yeah, I'm sure you make good money, but also something
Well,
you can really help people solve
Curtis,
the problem.
just on that topic, at this moment, because of what's going on in Ukraine, I'm Ukrainian in background. At this moment, I mean, there are 6 million Ukrainians out there somewhere in Western Europe, and 300,000 in the United States, 300,000 in Canada. And this recurring immigration theme has been a large part of my career in the last 2 years, in particular 3 years, because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And the projections are that if Ukraine loses the war, that as many as 20 million Ukrainians will be vacating Ukraine, going westward into Europe. And that's only part of the immigration topic that's affecting me, because I'm also concerned about the southern border in the United States and the issue of people coming and the illegals that are in the United States and so on. I couldn't possibly have predicted when I was coming out of law school many years ago that I would become an immigration lawyer first. It was a motivation for going to law school, but I didn't think, well, I'm going to be an immigration lawyer. I thought I would be this big, diplomat that I could explain to people, listen, the problem, let's say in the Middle East, it can be solved. All you need to do is write a good legal analysis. It's because people don't understand the law. That's why there's this problem in the Middle East. Or the same in Ukraine. It's a legal problem. That's what I thought. And I thought, if I become a lawyer, I can solve these problems for people. They'll all go, yeah, of course, that's what's wrong. No, that's not what's wrong. It's self-interest, it's envy, it's jealousy, it's human nature, it's money, it's power. It's not what you put on a piece of paper and the law. That's just a tiny bit of what's going on. But I had to learn that. I got through law school, and then everybody ignored me. Like, who are you? Like, what have you got to say about these themes? And then I got, oh, well, what am I? Wait a minute. There are two themes that are running through my life. One is immigration, and the other is communication. So I got to, bone up on those subjects and become the best that I can be. And now I didn't know that, holy smoke, immigration would become a big topic in the world. But sure enough, it did. And so now, gosh, I don't know how I ended up here, but I did. And communication, well, we're on this right now. This, for me, what we're doing, Curtis, you and me, is part of my calling. It's deep in my soul. Like in my heart, there's a burning need for me to be here talking to you. It's an aching need. And I believe it's the same for you. I think you're the same kind of person that I am. Deep inside you, there's a reason why you're running this whole show and what you're doing with Newswire. And I believe it's in everybody. I believe everybody has this inside them, a need to make a difference, to find the meaning of their life.
Solve a problem for somebody.
Yeah, and if you dig inside any person, everyone. It might be deep down because nobody's ever recognized it or nobody cares about the person or they've had a terrible life. But if you dig deep enough into a person's life, there's real unique beauty and value in there that they can share with other people, which is why we're here. Like, we're here to make a difference, in my opinion. Like, we're not here to lead your life and then die. Then on your gravestone, Andy Semotiuk, writer, died in, whatever it is. Big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing with the how easy it is. I mean, I've worked a lot over the years not judging people for whether that was lack of effort, lack of motivation, like, having customers come in where when I owned the retail stores, the pharmaceutical company and stuff, you'd have these the customers would come in and I'd have a hard time not judging on this dude sitting around playing video games, wasting his life. And so I kind of had a poor judgment of this person that's just wasting their life, and then start talking to them. They've been a customer for over a year, and start talking to them and figuring out the crazy life trauma that the person's been through, and maybe they've got some kind of a political view that is completely skewed opposite of mine, but taking the time to just listen, or somebody that's an atheist, there is no God, there's no way that, and so instead of having an argument where I guarantee there's a God, that I know God created the universe, but to start listening and say, God let my mom die at this young age, and I had I was molested by an uncle, and whatever the crazy story is. And you say, man, it's, if you take time to listen to somebody and really, really know their heart, there is such a different, it just opens up so much more of an ability to really understand somebody. And you seem like to be a DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster, that's something you've had to learn to become a phenomenal communicator as well, right?
Yeah. So just a moment on that theme. For 35 years, I was a member of Toastmasters, and every week I went to a club meeting and watched people present and listened to people provide feedback to those who were presenting to see how they could improve and become better. And it took me 35 years, but ultimately I became a distinguished Toastmaster. You'll see my designation up there over my shoulder in the video here. Now, it took me 35 years. A lot of Toastmasters get that within 6 months or a year or whatever. It just took me a long time, I guess. I'm a slow learner. But I think it's an invaluable experience, and I recommend it to everybody. I think Toastmasters is that place to learn how to speak and be a better communicator. One of the places. It doesn't have to be there, but I think that's a good place where you can learn a lot. And they teach you don't in your speech, and don't rock on your feet while you're talking, and look at the audience, and make a connection to the audience, etc. The little tips that you can pick up that carry you along, and pretty soon you get, to be pretty good in terms of communicating. But to become a great communicator, I believe the key is to reach the level. See, there are 3 levels of communication. One is informational. You're walking down the street and you want to find a store. You say, hey, buddy, where's this store? And he says, 2 blocks down that way, and then turn right. That's informational. Then there's the sort of contractual communication level. It's meeting of the mind. I'll pay you $10 if you put ads on your newswire for me that will promote my business. That's contractual, meeting of the minds. Yes, let's do it. And then there's meeting of the hearts. There's what I call spiritual communication. It's when you and the person you're communicating with become essentially soul brothers or soul mates, where you're talking from your heart to someone else's heart, and you're registering. You can talk from your heart, but maybe you won't register with someone. The other person's not interested, or you're not being effective. But if you can connect, where virtually time passes while you're in this conversation, and you don't even realize how much time you're spending on a topic because you're just really into it. Soulmates are people like married people who, love each other, parents and children. In that level of communication, love, I like to say love is spelled T-I-M-E. It's spending time, but not just any time. It's undivided attention time to the person you're with and with whom you're communicating. That to me is the highest form of existence. Now you can't always be a soulmate to everybody. Like President Trump talking to Congress last night, he's not going to be a soulmate to everybody. He's got a more like information, meeting of the minds and information level of communication. But even in that context, from moment to moment, there were moments when, whether you like him or you don't like him, he did reach a level of soulmate communication, particularly when he was talking to people who were in the audience or about people who were in the audience who had awful experiences, and how we tried to make up what happened for those people, to ease the pain of what those people felt, such as being attacked by an illegal immigrant and having a spouse killed or whatever, feeling empathy for those people. So that's a bit about, now why am I telling you all this? I forgot already. I don't know where we started with this. But I wanted to share at least that aspect of it.
I am really enjoying this conversation. If you're watching this right now on Amazon Fire TV, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. Take a look at it. We'll be right back in just a second. And I've got some other great questions for you, Andy. I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation.
This interview is sponsored by Newswire magazine. We celebrate the entrepreneurs and thought leaders shaping the future, those who don't just adapt, but innovate, who inspire others to think bigger, lead boldly, and create lasting change. Only a select few are featured in Newswire magazine, and for those who earn a place on the cover, the opportunities are unmatched. Your story shared with a global audience, your achievements celebrated on national billboards, reaching millions. Every leader has a story. Every vision deserves a platform. Who will rise to the top? Stay tuned. You're witnessing greatness unfold.
Hey, welcome back to Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. Andy, I am so glad to have you on the show. One of the things I was looking at on your website, when you go to myworkvisa.com, or if you're watching this, you scroll down, click the link, it'll take you to a landing page on myworkvisa.com. But there's a ton of great information on there. One of the things that I saw was the career guidance section. You've got all kinds of everywhere from job applications to information for job seekers, scholarship guides, education, career guides, school programs, all kinds of, I'm not even covering a fraction of it. But is that something you did just as a need to help people type of a section on there? Or what was the reason for that?
Yeah. Let me just say that the conversation we just had was all about Toastmasters, and I sort of came back to, I just want to conclude that it was Toastmasters that helped me sort of hone my skills there. But to mention the subject you're talking about, yeah, it's the materials there. Over time, people started emailing me and saying, hey, we have a school that teaches communication skills, or that can help young people coming out of university find jobs or whatever it was. And I didn't know where to place it. I didn't know what to do with it. And then I realized, well, I can do a careers page and I can put all these valuable tip type articles and connections on that page for people to find. So they can go on my site and they can find information about things like addictions, schools, trades, clubs, join Optimist Club, or, all the various service clubs and things like that. That's all on that page there. It's free.
Perfect. Yeah, that's another thing. As I was researching you before the show, we try to do a pretty strict background check type of a review of everybody and make sure we don't have either, there's a lot of weirdos and stuff. Not a lot, but there's people that are promoting some weird stuff. But I always love to see folks that are just selflessly offering. There's not a paywall or referral, no kind of an affiliate credit or anything on these. It's just resources you're offering with your immigration services. So you're offering business and investor and immigration is kind of your main target clientele, but you do marriage-based marriage-based immigration and quite a few different options. Can you explain, or can you kind of describe your perfect client, whether that's a business investor or whatever?
Okay. For some reason, the world has picked me to help hotel owners And I don't know if you know this, but about 80% of the hotel owners in the United States are named Patel. They're from the Gujarati background. Many
Okay.
of them come from Canada, actually, and move to the United States and they buy hotels. And for whatever reason, I seem to have fallen into the category where if someone, particularly Patels, are looking at buying a hotel in the United States and they need a work visa, I'm your man, so to speak. And it started funny because the first Patel that I met and the guy who actually started the whole trend, and I'm not going to mention his first name, since Patel is such a common name, it's not a revelation of who my client is. It's just a guy. But he came in and for some reason, he had faith in me. And he said, look, I'm going to work with you. I need a work visa. It's called an E2 visa to buy a hotel and run it. And you're going to help me. And I said, oh, I'd love to do that. Little did I know how much trouble I was going to have doing this with this guy because he was very demanding. He wanted everything perfect, And so, not, like excellent. He wanted perfect. So I'm working away and he's phoning me and I'm adding and it's, polishing and all this. It took forever. Anyway, finally he got through. And I said, well, thank goodness. At least he's through. I don't have to worry about that guy anymore. Suddenly all these other Patels are at my doorstep. It's him. He keeps saying, phone Andy. He knows, how to do this. And so I ended up with that. So that's my sort of day-to-day kind of area. And anybody who's starting a business, basically Canadian in particular, going into the U.S., E2 visa. And then more generally in the bigger leagues, there's a thing called an EB-5 green card application where someone wants to be a permanent resident of the U.S. and they invest $800,000 project that's been approved by the government, USCIS, such as, for example, an building or ski resort or all kinds of various kinds of investments. So they invest for 5 years, $800,000, and they create 10 jobs through their investment. And they get a green card, and then they get their money back at the end of 5 years, usually around 5 years. And that's popular too. But I don't have that many investors who have got $800,000 that they're ready to, invest.
Now, is that yearly? Is that an $8,000 a year minimum, or is that a one time?
One time, 800,000 for 5 years, and they get the money back at the end of 5 years. And there's risk involved. The project could go under, whatever, so you could lose your money. And who knows, maybe for some reason you might not get the green card. So there are risks involved. But I do, that's another area that I'm particularly involved in and I like. So those are some. And a key area that is sort of day-to-day bread and butter is a company. Well, let's say, for example, Toronto Dominion Bank has a manager in Toronto and they want to transfer the TD manager from Toronto to the TD Bank in the United States. That's called an intercorporate transfer. That's something we do all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you share a final thought with somebody that's looking at potentially immigrating, an investor or business owner that's looking at immigrating to the United States? What are some tips or thoughts for them to can help them along the way?
Okay. Well, one thing is at the moment, there's a bit of uncertainty going on because there's big changes in the United States. But in the area of investment, things are still pretty stable. I don't think that any changes that are made. There's this discussion taking place about a gold card that Trump is introducing, but I don't think it's going to impact this EB-5 case or that scenario that I talked about, nor the E2 or L1 visas. So you have to be on top of the news and watch what's going on, but the best thing is to get an attorney to help. Many people don't know that it's attorneys who help with immigration matters. So, for example, if I have a sore tooth, I go to a dentist. If I've got arthritis in my knee, I go to a doctor. But people don't know that if I have an immigration problem, I need to go to an immigration lawyer. It's generally not that well known, but that's the case. That's what immigration lawyers are for. So I'd urge people to consider that if they have an immigration need.
Our entire audience is typically authors, entrepreneurs, motivational speakers, investors, business owners, franchisees. I haven't had any franchisors on yet, but a lot of folks that are interested in business. Now, are you able to help people to move from pretty much any country, or to the United States or Canada, or is it a limit on
anywhere? But let me share one story before we go. It's about motivation, which might be helpful to these people. Okay, we talked about Toastmasters earlier, and in Toastmasters there are these people who speak at conferences of Toastmasters once a year, and they're called Golden Gavel speakers. They're given a golden gavel to signify that they're a great speaker. And while I was in Toastmasters, I noticed that they had recordings of great speakers, Golden Gavel winners, and I made it a point to listen to some of these great speeches that they made. And one speech that I listened to that's worthy of sharing is about motivation, and it was given by one of the Golden Gavel winners. Bob Richards was his name. He's long since passed on. Talked about motivation, and he shared this story. When he was a young kid, he loved baseball, and they had a semi-professional team in the place where they lived, and there was one player on the baseball team, a guy named Lou Boudreau, who was, I think, a second baseman, and eventually went to the St. Louis Cardinals to play second base. But back then he was in this semi-professional league, and he was the idol for the team. And Richards was a small kid. And at one baseball game, he was in the far end of the bleachers when Boudreau hit a home run, and he caught the ball. So he went after the game to the players' entrance. And as they were coming out, having, dressed and so on, he waited for Boudreau to come out. And when he did, Boudreau went through all the kids that were waiting, signing autographs, and he got to Richards, and he said to him, "And what's your name, son?" And Richards said, Bobby Richards. And he said, "Oh, that's great. And what do you want to be when you grow up?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to be a great baseball player." And Boudreau said to him, "Oh, that's great, Bobby. I can see one day you're going to be really great." And Richards talked about that moment, and he said, "I can't tell you how inspiring it was for someone who I idolized to assure me that one day I would be great." That was a moment of great motivation. And then he went on and he described motivation even further. He said that that motivation is something that is badly needed in society. And he illustrated that at that time when he was speaking, America was going through a depression or a recessionary period economically. And in the newspapers, there were articles written saying what's needed is someone with motivation, someone who could motivate. In fact, 3 economists all concluded when asked about what's needed, they all said motivation. So that he related that fact, and then he said, well, what is motivation? And he added this insight. He said, motivation is painting a larger picture of someone's life than the picture they have in their own mind. And the moment of motivation in particular is the moment when that person latches onto that big picture for himself or herself. That knocked me over. I thought, wow, that's it. In a nutshell, that's it. So that's what I try to do with my clients, whether it's in my speaking or in my immigration work. And so, in short, let me just say, in immigration, my mission statement is helping clients improve their lives through immigration. It's helping them latch onto that bigger picture of their lives, such as having a hotel in the United States, and helping them get that hotel. That's where it's at for me.
Absolutely awesome. Andy, thank you so much for being a guest on today and sharing that's just the incredible insights and wisdom and knowledge that you've shared with us. I would like to steal that whole last segment that you just shared and turn that into our motto for success, motivation, and inspiration, the TV show.
Go for it.
Yeah, you did a great job there.
I did.
Thanks again for your time.
I learned it myself, so you're welcome to it as well.
Thanks for watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. This episode was designed to help you level up. See you next time.